So we're back after an odd Mercury getting ready to station retrograde sort of delay. Technology, we'll throw a little Uranus in there for fun, and I'll take responsibility for Zoom ignorance. But I'm gonna try this screen share again. There it is. You can see it now, right?
Yes.
Yay, woo. Okay. So this new moon is full of surprises, good and bad. That was a little surprise to me because usually this share is just fine. And we've got some sweet expansion, some big love, and much yummy coming from those trines again. And perhaps a second wind, a blowing out of some cobwebs, clearing out of, I think of with that Mars, Pluto, a good time to clean the basement.
Oh, can you scroll it up so I can see the whole chart?
Yep. I may need to make it
Minimize it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit smaller here. That goes smaller. No. Yeah, nothing is working quite right for me today. There we go. That'll do it. I can read. There we go. So we've got just a touch more. We've got some interesting and lovely configurations, and this is still true for today, which is the 7th of September. We've got, of course, the moon is joined in conjunction with, I don't know why I have an opposition sign there, I left it. The moon and the sun are conjoined at 14 degrees of Virgo, and that's our new moon. And we've got Mars in a trine with Pluto and Jupiter in a trine with Venus, and the new moon in a trine itself with Uranus. So there are 3 trines, which is why I'm calling it yummy, because trines are yummy if you take advantage of them. Otherwise, it could just be some good feelings. And of course, as we talked about earlier a little bit, kind of depends on where this is happening in your chart. For me personally, Mars is just about to go over my ascendant, and I've had experience with that before, and that's not always pleasant.
It's about to go over my north node.
Yeah. So there's, the conjoined with Pluto, in a trine, that might make it easier for dredging up some dark, unpleasant things you don't want to think of, as one interpretation. So even though we're talking about a trine, the trine is ease. Ease with what? Well, that kind of has to do with much more with what's going on personally. But there's some interesting stuff.
Ease with dredging up the dark stuff. God.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all that crap just coming right up to the surface. Yay. So easy.
Yeah. It's like using a plunger and it works. That's good. Be better if it be worse if it didn't. But the one that gets me is this Uranus, and let me talk a little bit about that, and then I'll let you give me all your comments and feedback. But this is the one that's getting me, because our Uranus here, circled in blue, has been at 14 degrees for a long time.
Months.
A really, really long time. And it's not gonna move in a big hurry back to 10 degrees. So, we're heading back to where we were a few months ago, which is a little frightening in so many ways, to 10 degrees of Taurus. And then it's going to go back over this point again before Uranus heads on forward and moves on. And it's just such a long time. So it also means that this trine is much more powerful, because when it's retrograde, and it's just stationed retrograde in the last couple of weeks. So that's why it's so grindingly slow. And with this retrograde trine, this new moon, there is a real potential for an ease with change, whatever that change is. So, and again, a surprising change, or maybe a technological innovation, or something that has to do with Virgo. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, let's look at the 2 degrees. We're still at the Uranus of shellfish groping on the edge of the water while children play on the beach. And then the moon is at a family tree.
That's pretty interesting there.
So we're still in this like liminality, being on the edge of the elements. But there's still that potential for nourishment and innocence. It leads me to want to take the effort to be rooted with loved ones.
That's nice. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Who do
Right.
you want to be rooted with?
Yeah.
And the like upheaval, times of upheaval and change.
Yeah, especially when, the Taurus and its connection with land and hearth, home and hearth,
Mm-hmm.
in a big sense there. So what about the yummy Jupiter Venus? That's pretty sweet.
Jupiter Venus is pretty sweet. What were those symbols? You had them written down on your sheet.
Yeah, I think they're further down here. Let me go down and scoop them up here. Yeah, Venus is the light of an autumn leaf, brings to a pilgrim the sudden revelation of the mystery of life and death.
We were just talking about death and rebirth before
Yeah,
we took a little break.
that's right.
So there's Venus contemplating life and death, and
That's
Jupiter just amplifies it. And we were also talking about the butterfly and the goose stage, how that goose stage lasts a while.
boy, the symbolism is pretty right on, isn't it?
It's right on. Like we didn't even talk about that beforehand.
No, that's fascinating. That's really pretty interesting. Yeah, and it does all fall back to the Pluto. I mean, in my mind, a big part of it falls back to Pluto because that's where we have the Mars Pluto trine going on. And
Mm-hmm.
Pluto is a woman entering the convent at 24 Capricorn.
Right.
I'm not sure about the Mary had her little lamb for Mars. I don't know that I'm getting a meaning for that.
Uh, More gentleness and
With
companionship.
Mars? I'm thinking more
Maybe
in
it's
Virgo, Mars is
encouraging.
counting lambs or something for getting them ready for slaughter.
Maybe it's encouraging Mars to be gentler and
Yeah,
companionable.
I don't know. I have much.
You don't like it?
I'm not very, you know, Mars is not the happy planet. It's the energy planet. And if you have something to do with that energy, then you can harness Mars, I think, and let it be on your side and do good things with that energy. But I don't see it being benefic. But in Virgo, it's practical.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's certainly not in its exalted in any way in Virgo. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's not but it's even unhappier in Libra. And that's where it's going to be shortly.
Right.
Mars is headed right into Libra, and Mars really doesn't like Libra. So maybe this is a little respite with Mars running around with the lambs in the field.
Mm-hmm.
The woman entering the convent, though, that fits right in with Pluto in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Retreat or time to be alone, time to go down or under or away. Maybe thinking, deep thinking or writing or transcribing or all those things that might be Plutonic and Capricornian and down in the deep and transformational
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Spiritual contemplation.
Spiritual contemplation.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the Sabian symbols are actually much more positive overall and reflect the trine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty interesting. I like that a lot. Since we're here, I'll go ahead and go look down through this a little bit. Starting with looking at our symbology just a little bit differently. The moon conjunct the sun at 14 degrees in Virgo, trine Uranus at 14 degrees. And this is an exact trine, like practically to the minute, with that giant old planet just on the dot.
Mm-hmm.
And these two, again, with our Venus trine Jupiter and our Mars trine Pluto, we've got a lot of positive energy added to this new moon. So it might be a good time to set some intentions.
Oh, definitely.
With the Jupiter involved, I came up with an interpretation that sweet changes allow us to fly because we're in the air. Libra's in the air sign of, or Venus is in the air sign of Libra, but don't get too close to the sun. Because we've got this Mars configuration, and Jupiter can really blow things up. You know, you can go too big, you can go too far. So where can it go too far would be my question. Try to hold back on letting things go too far, especially with this change in the mix.
That's good advice.
The new moon is a practical new moon in Virgo. It's giving us new beginnings and a fresh start. And it's interesting that it sits at the symbol of an aristocratic family tree. I just find that interesting. What do you pull out of that?
Well, I want to just get rid of the word aristocratic because I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just call it a family tree. I just go back to that like rootedness. It's Virgo. It's the Virgo new moon. And we're coming up on the equinox, and we're coming up on the dark half of the year, and Pluto's really active right now. And it makes me want to dig down.
Yeah.
And focus on connections.
I feel you. I feel that a lot. Now I get a weird, the personal is political sense here that I guess I'll digress on for a second. Hopefully nobody minds. Skip over it if you mind. But there was an interview on some news program I saw a while back with a prominent Republican who was talking about his family history, and he invoked a man named Kukendall, Alexander Kukendall. Kukendall is a Dutch last name, and this particular man was a revolutionary hero. And after invoking him, the other media outlets came out and pointed out that he was also a slaveholder, as were, of course, many people who were revolutionary were also slaveholders, right? I mean, all of the founding fathers were slaveholders.
Pretty much.
We're talking about a period of time when there was slavery. And so that's an aristocratic family tree.
Yeah.
And I personally know this because I'm also a descendant of Kukendall. A bunch of us are, right? Because our family, this is a family tree. What is it, 6 degrees of separation or whatever? I'm a direct descendant of Kukendall too. Not all that proud to say so. On some level, he was a slaveholder, but on another level, he did fight in the Revolutionary War. So our family tree is a mixed bag.
It is.
When it comes to the changes going on, there's, clearly a lot of changes going on, and it's coming, it's not just change coming out of nowhere, it's coming from the past. Yes. So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about lately, and maybe you have too, is the identification that a lot of white supremacist groups have over the last many years, infiltrated law enforcement and other organizations. That's also part of our family tree.
Right.
And probably part of the purging that may be going on. And my hope is that the trine can help provide an ease towards purging some more of that pus from that wound, so that we might get to a place of acceptance of our very truly multicultural family tree. But
Right.
there's a digression, and I apologize for any way out political stuff, but
No, I see what you're saying. It's like we can look at that moon, sun, new moon symbol and take it as a time to really attend to ancestral issues. I personally spend a fair chunk of thought and time thinking about the ancestral wounds and ancestral trauma, and looking at the whole of this chart makes it seem like this is a really peak time to try to address some of those things.
yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And I don't think we can see this, but I put a little, a meaning down here of this sun, moon, trine, Uranus, a surprise or technological advance in the step-by-step process of starting something new. And, there's a lot of technology being used in, for example, going through the videos of what happened on January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And by using that kind of Virgoan step-by-step analysis of that, and using the technology and the advances there may be some surprises that are discovered that can take us in a fresh direction, help us to get beyond that. My biggest fear is that we're stuck in this, Uranus at 14 degrees forever, this kind of inability to move beyond
The edge of the shore.
to the shore. Yeah. Yeah,
Just
exactly.
stuck there at the shoreline.
That's just right there. Yeah.
Sea levels rising.
So let's take a look at that Mars trine Pluto a little bit here too, a little more. Mars, again, energy, passion, movement, go-get-emness. It also can be turned inwards though and be the negative and the opposite of those things, or turned outwards. And Mars is the god of war, right? It's trine, so this is a positive aspect, the most positive aspect we can have. Pluto, which is regeneration and transformation and rebirth and power and the subconscious, and it's also the generational planet, so that pulls us right back into these family tree ideas. And the meaning there, a well executed dive from high in the air into deep water. That was my thought, because you're in the air sign. Actually, it's not in the air sign yet, is it?
No, 2 earth signs.
Yeah, they're both earth signs. So
Yeah.
forget the air. Forget the air. I was wrong on that one.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Mars in Libra trying to come up with that Pluto, but it's not. They're both in earth signs. So we're talking about an earth trine. The energy in Virgo helping out in some way this transformation or regeneration in Pluto.
Could we look at Mars as like this trine as like an extra religious symbol if we think of Mary and her little lamb as Mary and Jesus, the Lamb of God?
Tell me more.
I don't know if I know more.
I mean, sure, maybe. I don't see why not. I mean,
yeah, there's more to that Mary and her little lamb than I think that we're seeing.
well, Mary is a representation of positive womanhood, and powerful womanhood. There is definitely something there, and of course, Mary is a religious symbol, for thousands of years in Christianity. So that there is something there, and of course the religious symbol of the lamb as being, as you say, the meek, subservient, and Mars in a role of having a powerful woman, putting Mars in a subservient place.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting.
And the lamb being that which is sacrificed.
Yep.
And the woman entering the convent is a sacrifice. So now I'm wondering if this Mars trine Pluto is about sacrifice.
Yeah, that's real interesting. I think you may have something there. Um, a woman entering a convent is going there to be alone, maybe do studying, get away from the world, contemplate God. Mary and her little lamb are seen also as a alone, solitary. They're solitary symbols. Mary's not out there, with herding a whole group of lambs. She's out there with her little lamb, one little lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
this is an interesting trine.
me growing up Catholic is like my childhood was surrounded by images of the Virgin with the baby.
Yeah. And so Mary and her little lamb evokes a lot of that.
Yeah.
And again, the lamb is just a symbol in general for meekness and submission to God,
Mm.
maybe.
Yeah.
That's just real interesting for Mars to be in that place, and which is the let's look back up here again, which is the dispositor. We've got, I would say Mars is probably the more powerful of these two. Moving into Libra, it's going to lose its power. Pluto is not stationing, it's been retrograde for quite some time. And the fulcrum point between the two is here in late Scorpio. So if I had any points in late Scorpio, I'd be kind of taking a look at that as well, as being a midpoint between these two.
Mm-hmm.
To maybe give some ideas of how this and where this impacts in your life. Where is Capricorn and where is Virgo in your chart? For me, this is my 4th house and this is my 12th house.
Mm-hmm.
So this interaction is going on between the 4th and the 12th. I haven't really unpacked that yet. So the 4th is my, home, family, deeper subconscious, deep level, sometimes things we don't even get at. And that's where Pluto sits right now, in my home. Pluto's right at home with me right now. Yeah, and has been for some time now. And Mars, just about to go over my ascendant, being in trine with that, maybe making it easier again to dredge up some home stuff that needs clearing out, like that ancestral family tree.
Yeah.
Maybe needs a little shaking out of some of the old bones in that closet or something.
Right.
So that might be my personal interpretation.
Or some fertilizer on the roots.
Maybe some fertilizer on the roots. Yeah. But Mars does give it, another meaning to Mars is cutting.
Mm,
There are people cutting family ties.
that's for sure.
Right now, there's people that, I love but don't want to be anywhere near for for simply health reasons.
There's a lot of people losing family.
A lot of people losing family.
Not just cutting ties.
Right. That cutting can also signify an end to someone or something in our lives. That's right. So, yeah, there's some, the ease that the trine implies when we're talking about the two grand, Pluto is can have all of our planets, of course, have higher and more negative and more positive signs or sides of them, but Pluto and Mars are pretty dark.
Yeah.
Pretty dark. So though there's a lot of positivity here, there's a kind of a crunch in the middle of this soft cookie.
Right. It's like just because it comes with ease doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Right. Let me explore the last of the symbology, I think, that's here. We looked at the Venus Jupiter, and again, that's real interesting that we've got the Sabian symbols that are essentially, revealing the meanings so accurately of where these planets sit right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's just synchronistic. One thing that I looked at was how big the Libra Aries axis is, impact is in this chart. Heavy with Pluto, manic with Mars, and Venus is doing her utmost best here. But this is Venus's last shot because she is headed to the Plutonic underworld soon. Dun, 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 right? She is not going to return to the light until the end of 2020.
What do you mean by that?
She's going to go, look at her, look at where she's headed.
Yeah.
She's headed into Scorpio next. Shortly,
Yeah.
she's going to be in Scorpio. Scorpio and Venus are a sad combination.
Right.
And when she gets, you know, I won't talk about her waning or waxing phase because I'm not
No,
adept at that
what
at
you
that
mean by
moment.
2022?
Because she's going to next connect with Pluto. And she's going into her retrograde phase, which she only does every 2 years.
Oh.
So we're going to be feeling this Plutonic. She's going to the Pluto realms.
Is she, when she hits Pluto, is that when she's going into retrograde?
Yeah, that's what I can't speak to right now because I didn't memorize that. I just glanced at it. But, you know, it's definitely so that she's going to be hitting this Pluto 3 times. And
Oh, wow, really?
right. And in this retrograde phase, you know, it'll be 2020, the end of 2022 before she is clear and the morning star again.
Oh, wow.
So take advantage of the last bit of Venus rays we have. Yeah.
Okay.
So heading into what feels to me like a dark winter.
A long dark winter.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that's why when it's kind of like, okay, we've got a good harvest this year. Here's the Jupiter Venus. And it does feel so seasonal. You know, here we've got a good harvest put up for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have a good family party with the people that are well that you can be with.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the time that you can because be prepared. Make sure your storm cellar has a firm door. Make sure your potatoes are in a dry spot. You know, get prepared because this could be something. Venus heading into the Platonic zones is likely to take us all in some new directions that are transformative.
I mean, normally I like that kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, let's dig up the dirt, turn it over, start fresh. But right now it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and I come back to this, this white supremacist stuff, because I listened to an interview today with an expert historian on a political historian. Can't remember her name right now. I don't have it on me right now. But her focus was on the history of the white supremacists and how most people had thought that they had just pretty much gone away.
Why?
Even though, you know, McVeigh was clearly, you know, a white supremacist. And maybe it's just optimism. Maybe it's just optimism that Jupiter Venus can make us think, oh, it's sunny today. We don't have to worry about putting up potatoes.
Mm.
Or we can go, hey, this is a really good time to put up potatoes because there's Pluto coming.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be, you know, kind of our collective zeitgeist, that over the last, you know, many years, we've seen these negative, you know, she was calling it authoritarian and not fascist. And that there was very specific reasons why authoritarianism and not fascism, because fascism enlists business.
Right.
And the authoritarians like North Korea, for example, doesn't enlist business. They go against business needs and the needs of business people, small and large. So this kind of authoritarianism, you know, at a larger scale, is being fueled by white supremacy. And if we can't dig down to the real roots of it, how are we going to uproot it? I don't know about you, but I've dug some tap roots that you're not going to get out with a little spade. You're going to have to go get a post hole digger.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to get a post hole digger and get some big old people there, some people with some log legs to get that post-toe digger to go down deep enough to really uproot something. If you find a tap root, you may be pulling on that for a long time. And what if you leave a little bit in?
Mm-hmm.
You leave just a little bit in.
I did learn recently a way to kill roots. And I don't know what kind of metaphor we can draw from this. But if you drill a hole into one of those roots, or like a tree stump that you're trying to actually get rid of, without poisoning the ground, you can drill a hole into those roots and fill it with Epsom salt, and it'll dry it out.
Interesting.
I don't know what the metaphor is there, but there's got to be a metaphor there. Like maybe it's not just that you have to dig something out, maybe it's that you have to add something.
Right, and it makes me think of the elements. The earth, Pluto's in the earth element. That's what we'd be digging out of.
Yeah.
Whatever house Pluto sits in your chart, but it's in Capricorn, so it's in that earth element, which is even magnified by the Capricorn element of, it is a magnified earth element. It's an earth element. What am I saying? It's earthy.
Yeah. The cardinal earth.
It's the cardinal earth. That's right. That's what I mean to say. But that salt comes from the earth. Salt has very specific purposes. That's interesting. Salt, certainly you're supposed to throw it behind your shoulder to ward off evil things. You use salt to fertilize certain crops like asparagus. And salt because asparagus is a seafood. It's actually comes from the ancient times when it's sea. So it likes the salt. It craves the salt.
Interesting.
Yeah, its inheritance is from the sea. So there must be something to that salt part of it. It's interesting.
Salt in the wound.
Yeah, that too.
It's like, how do we put salt in the wound of white supremacy?
That might be.
To like dry out the rootstock.
I like that analogy. Yeah, that's good.
If we're going to talk politics for a little bit, I just want to make a quick little comment about the obnoxiousness of the concept of a Texas Taliban.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to be on this topic of the root ill of white supremacy in this country. We do not need to go halfway across the world and refer to brown men of a different religion to talk about terrorists.
That's it.
We have it here. We have it here. It's always been here. And you don't need to compare to other people. Just look at your own authoritarianism right here.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the things that they're trying to do to return us to a time of real pain for women.
Yeah.
When women didn't have the right to choose, and that's already being restricted. And I mean, in fact, it's not like, women have equal pay or anything now. So the need to take us back, to me, represents a huge fear. And so I think what I have to do is, not in addition to the salt that might kill the roots there, I have to hope that some love can go to the progeny of people in such pain, to keep them from going down that path, because it's pain that's taken them there. There's a fear of women and people of color and people that speak a different language, and we're in a different world than they can live in. They're now the foreign species. At least that's what I think.
Yeah.
They will be the foreign species. They are becoming the minority. They're not going to stay the majority.
I think that's what they're afraid of. I don't think they're afraid of women and people of color. I think that they're afraid of losing power.
And they are losing power. They will lose power. Yes.
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile. That's where Aquarius comes in, and we are the Borg. But I pulled up here this defining aspect again, just to remind us that Uranus is square Saturn all year. We're at this kind of a little bit of a, I would call it a break if we didn't have Uranus square the new moon right this second.
Right.
So Uranus is completely prominent in everything we do. And it's still hanging out there on the beach, watching the kids groping at the
That's why
shellfish.
it's not super rebellious. Uranus is like real active, but it's just like chilling on the beach.
Exactly. I'm gonna stop our share. So yeah, we got an interesting new moon, something that we could take advantage of to help prepare us, I think, for where we're headed, and you know, a little bit of maybe bucking up.
Mm.
You know, sometimes we have to buck up a little bit because things get really tough.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and it's hard to buck up, I think, right now for a lot of people.
It is. I just want to like crawl under a blanket on the couch.
Yeah. Yes, I get that. So anything else we want to say about this new moon, or its upcoming, our upcoming Venus and Pluto?
Bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
I don't know. That's all a little too personal for me to get into right now.
Well,
It's
we
really
will talk.
fun.
Yeah, we'll talk again later about the Venus and Pluto and the giant underworld. It reminds me there's a story about that, so we'll have to recite the story or something next time and get into the plutonic underworlds, and you know how the day is eventually saved.
There's so many stories.
I'm thinking of half of the time in the underworld and half the time in the upper world to save the grains. Serious. Yeah. So anyway, we will save that myth for next time. And
Okay.
thank you guys for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.